Hi there, this is Brenda with Kreations.com, and I want to show you this card using a technique called Faux tile. This technique is created by scoring lines 1 inch apart, up and down, and side to side. Then we're going to stamp some images, and we're going to add some embossing across the top. So I'm going to try to tilt it a little bit so I think you can see how shiny it is on the different squares. So it gives you the look of tile on your card. So this is Whisper White cardstock. It's cut to 4 inches by 5, and I use the Simply Scored to score every inch across the card this way, and you rotate it, and then you score every inch that way. And you want the raised part to be on the back, so it's actually kind of recessed on the front. We're going to use this image from the stamp set called Papaya Collage, and we're going to stamp it in an ink called Pacific Point. We've already placed our stamp on the block, and I just inked this pad so it's nice and juicy, so I don't want to press too hard while I'm inking it up. So I'm just going to lightly tap it and see that it's nicely inked up. When you stamp on the paper, you don't want to press too firmly because you're trying to avoid getting ink inside those lines. That's going to end up being the grout between our tiles. So I'm just going to set it down in the corner, and I'm going to press it but not mash it. We can do a little bit of touch up later with the blender pen if we need to. So see how it still avoided that grout line? That's exactly what you want. So we're just going to keep stamping, just tap tap, get it nice and inky, and we're going to press firmly, but we're not going to be mashing it as hard as we might. So just a little pressing right there, and then lift that up. We're just going to repeat this all across the card here. So we have all of the tiles stamped pretty well. You'll notice there's some spots where I didn't get enough ink on there. This is where you can take your blender pen and do a little bit of touch up. Just bring in your ink pad, and if your blender pen has ink on the tip, just go like this sideways just to kind of clean that off. And you want just a little bit of ink. You don't need a lot of ink for this. And if you use your marker to touch up any of these images, you're going to be able to tell the start and stop lines with your marker. Your blender pen will blend it in a little bit better. And it's also going to dry slightly lighter. So as you're doing your touch up, keep that in mind. It won't look exactly like the other images, but it'll look pretty darn close. And we're going to add a little bit of shading or a little light coloring on the tiles just to help that grout pop a little bit. So I'm going to use a color called Soft Sky, and we're using one of our stamping sponges. Hold it on the straight sides here where it kind of curves, and then pat it to your ink pad, and you're going to go in a soft circular motion. And it doesn't take a lot of ink. You just want to rub lightly. Again, you're trying not to fill in the grout line. Just adding a little bit of color will help that grout pop a little bit. Okay, so we've got it nice and inked. Again, it's just a light coloring of the Soft Sky. You're going to take your Versamark pad and you're going to pat it all over the entire cardstock. And don't worry about pressing firmly here. You can just mash away because we're going to remove the powder that ends up in the grout lines. So just ink it up so it's all nice and shiny. And then what you're going to do is take your clear embossing powder. I like to keep my powder in a little plastic container just so I don't have to go back and forth to the little jars that it comes in. So I get the powder all the way to the edge, and I'm going to place the cardstock in like this, and I let it go about halfway, and then I pull that back up. And then I miss that little bit right there, so I'm just going to hold it by the sides and dip that in. And give it a little tap on the back. That'll get rid of any excess powder. Is take your blender pen and you're going to drag it right inside that score line. And you can see how it's removing that powder. So just brush that off, and you can lightly blow off any excess powder. Don't worry about it if it comes over to the side of the tile too much. You're going to do a second application of the clear powder, so it'll catch any of that. So we're just going to repeat this for all these lines here. And you can see all the powder that is on the card, and you can also see where we've run the blender pen through the grout line to clean that up. So I'm going to go emboss this, and I'll be right back. Okay, I've already embossed the clear embossing powder, and you can see it has a little bit of shine to it, but not quite as much as I'd like. So we're going to repeat that step one more time. Okay, so we've got the second layer of clear embossing powder melted on the tiles, and you can see how nice and shiny that is. So we're going to add a little bit of the white organza ribbon. We're just going to go all the way around and tie a simple knot in the front. Give one little angle this way, and I just keep that same direction on this side. Because the ribbon goes all the way around, we can scoot it and just slide it. And I'm going to position the ribbon between the grout lines because I don't want to cover that up. I like that element of the card. So I'm just going to get this right between the grout lines. And I just need to fuss with this a little bit and get that like that. Now I'm going to layer this a little bit differently than the first sample. So I have some Whisper White cardstock. This is cut just slightly larger. I think it measures 4 1/8 by 5 1/8. So it just has a little white border all the way around. And I have a piece of Soft Sky cardstock. So get that kind of centered. Okay, and then press that down. So now we need to have a little greeting here. I'm going to pick this image right here. You'll notice with this stamp there's a lot of open area here, and if I mash too hard on the ink pad, it'll get ink there and likely get ink on your paper as well. So you want to lightly tap it, no mashing, and see how well that inked up. So come here and press that down and lift it up. And I'm going to use the greeting right here. Again, we're going to ink it up in Pacific Point, and then just line that up. And there we have our image. So I'm going to add a little coloring of Soft Sky on the bird. I'm going to go to my blender pen, just make sure there's no colored ink on the end. Tap, tap to the edge, and then just lightly color that in. It's such a soft color, you could probably use the marker directly, but I have the blender pen out, so I just went with that. So just that little bit will give him some nice shading. We're going to use the decorative label punch to punch this out. Turn your punch upside down, slide the paper in and get that centered. And you can do a half squeeze to hold the paper so you can check to see that that's lined up properly, and when you like it, just give it a punch. We're going to add 4 dimensionals. I'm going to tuck this under just a little bit. It's okay that your ribbon overlaps, and then press that down. So this is the second sample. The only difference is I just added that layer of Soft Sky underneath. On the original sample, I added some crystal effects to the bird. So I think you can see how he's a little bit shiny there. I wanted some shiny here to match the shiny there. So I hope you enjoyed this technique called Faux Tile, and we'll give it a try. It's really easy. It takes a little bit of effort with the embossing, but it's not difficult, and it gives you a really pretty finished look to the card. For more ideas, you can find me at KeenanCreations.com. Thanks, and have a great day.